I found a hidden camera inside my smoke detector while changing the battery. Professional installation. Wireless connection. Pointed directly at my bedroom door. At 67 years old. Living alone on my family's farm outside Macon, Georgia. Land 3 generations of my people bled, scraped, and prayed over. I had one question burning through me that I couldn't shake loose. Why would anyone need to watch me sleep? So I made a decision that changed everything. I left that camera exactly where it was. Didn't say a word to a single soul. I just started paying quiet, careful attention to the people closest to me. 3 days later, my daughter said something she had no business knowing, something she couldn't have known unless she'd been watching me through that lens. And that's when everything I thought I understood about my family came apart like rotted wood under a Georgia summer rain. Before I go any further, drop a comment right now. Where are you watching from? What time is it where you are? I want to know how far this story reaches across this country, because what happened to me happens more often than any of us want to admit. And the people who see it coming first, the ones who sound the alarm, are usually the ones everyone else is too slow to listen to. Now let me take you back to where this started. The Saturday battery check was a routine my late wife, Loretta, built into this household 30 years ago. Every 6 months without fail, swap out the smoke detector batteries, test the carbon monoxide alarms, inspect the fire extinguisher in the kitchen. Loretta had been gone 4 years now. Taken by breast cancer, she fought with more grace and sheer backbone than most men I've ever known could have mustered. She never once asked the Lord to take the cup from her. She just kept planning, kept organizing, kept protecting what was ours right up until the very end. That was Loretta. 3 steps ahead, always. I kept her routine alive because it was the only way I knew to keep a piece of her alive inside this house she loved so much. I was up on my stepladder in the upstairs hallway, unscrewing the smoke detector cover when something felt wrong the second I lifted it. The weight was off, too heavy for a 9-volt battery and basic wiring. I pulled the whole unit down and turned it over in my hands. And there it was. A tiny black cylinder, no bigger than my thumb, nestled right beside the battery compartment. A lens, a camera lens, pointing out through a small hole that had been drilled deliberately. Through the plastic housing, I stood on that ladder for a full minute without taking a Cody breath. I'd spent 38 years as a forensic accountant with First Georgia Patriot Bank before I retired. I'd seen fraud in every form imaginable: embezzlement rings, identity theft operations, insurance scams elaborate enough to fill a courtroom for months. I knew what surveillance equipment looked like. This was not something bought cheap online and slapped in by an amateur. This was professional, expensive, the kind of equipment that required real knowledge and real money to install correctly and discreetly. Climbed down carefully and sat at my kitchen table, with the smoke detector in front of me like evidence. At a crime scene, because that is exactly what it was. Someone had been watching me in my own home. The home Loretta and I built our life inside. The home she filled with warmth, organization, and a quiet intelligence that still held this place together. 4 years after she was gone, I forced myself to think the way I'd always thought when the numbers didn't add up. Logic first, grief and anger later. Who had access? Who had opportunity? My neighbor Earl Washington kept a spare key for emergencies, but Earl was 76 years old and could barely operate his cable box. The HVAC technician came by in October for the annual inspection, but I'd stayed with him the entire time. He never went upstairs, not once. My grandson Darius had visited for spring break in February, but Darius was 20 years old and more interested in taking my old pickup down. The back roads and anything happening inside this house, Dot. And then there was my daughter, Denise. She'd been making the drive out every Sunday for the past 3 months, ever since she moved back to Georgia from Atlanta. Sighed she wanted to help around the house. Said she worried about me being out here alone at my age. Denise had been in every room of this house, multiple times, alone. I sat back in my chair and rubbed my face hard. No, that was a thought I didn't want to have. Denise was my daughter, my only child, the girl Loretta and I raised in this house. But even as I tried to shut it down, the accountant in me was already running through details I dismissed before. Denise asking about my medications last week. Denise wanting to know my doctor's full name. Denise asking what I planned to do with the farm when I was gone. I told her not to worry about it, told her everything was settled in my will. She'd smiled and moved right along. I hadn't thought twice about it then. I was thinking about it now that I made my decision right there, at that kitchen table. No confrontation. No ripping that camera out of the ceiling. I was going to do what I'd done for 4 decades every time something didn't line up in a client's books. Investigate quietly. Gather solid evidence, follow the money, and find the truth before I made a single move. I put the smoke detector back exactly where it had been. Camera and all. Let them watch. Let them believe I hadn't noticed a thing. And I started paying very close attention to everything my daughter did and said from that moment forward. The following Sunday, Denise arrived at 11 o'clock with a pot of her mother's sweet potato soup and her husband, Marcus Cole, walking in behind her. Marcus was an insurance adjuster out of Atlanta. They'd been married 8 years. He'd always been the quiet kind, the type who let his wife run the conversation while he sat back, watched, and calculated everything behind flat, steady eyes. I'd always taken it as his personality. That morning, I looked at it differently. "Daddy," Denise said, kissing my cheek. "You look tired. You sleeping all right?" "Fine," I said. "Just getting older." She laughed lightly, but her eyes drifted upward, toward the hallway ceiling, toward the smoke detector. "We should check your carbon monoxide detector," she said. "That old furnace still worries me this time of year." "Checked everything yesterday," I said. "All clear." Something moved across her face. Just a flicker, surprise, then something colder, gone before she let it land. Marcus drifted off to use the bathroom, while Denise warmed the soup. I watched her work through my kitchen, like she already knew where everything lived, opening drawers without asking, checking expiration dates on my prescription bottles, sorting through the mail on my counter, as if reading through it were just a natural part of helping. "Daddy," she said, holding up an envelope. "This is from your bank. You opening these regularly?" "Every month." "Like clockwork." She paused. "Have you ever thought about setting up online banking? I could get you all set up. Make things easier for you." "I've been reading paper statements for 40 years," I said evenly. "I'll manage just fine." She smiled. "Of course. Just trying to help." Over lunch, Marcus brought up the land. 400 acres of prime Georgia soil that my grandfather fought to own in the 1940s, when a black man holding clear title to farmland in this state was an act of pure, hard-headed defiance. Land worth considerably more now than anyone back then could have ever imagined. "The Carmichaels sold their back 40 last month," Marcus said, keeping his voice easy and casual. "Got close to $1.5 million. Good for them," I said. "You ever think about what you'd want to do with this place? Down the road, I mean." I looked at him and kept my voice flat. "Down the road isn't here yet." He didn't push further. He just nodded and went back to his soup. When they left, Denise held on to me longer than felt right. There's a kind of hug that feels rehearsed, and this was one of them. "I love you, Daddy." She pulled back and looked into my face. "You know that, right?" "I know," I said. After their car disappeared down the gravel road, I walked through every room of this house. I found 3 more cameras. One inside the living room light fixture. One built into the kitchen clock above the stove. One in my home office, aimed directly at my desk. At the drawer where I kept my financial folders, and the spiral notebook where Loretta had sat me down years ago and made me write down every password, every account number, every PIN. "James," she'd said, "you are brilliant with other people's money and hopeless with your own paperwork. Write it all down so I don't have to worry." She was always right. She was always protecting what was ours, even from threats she never lived long enough to see coming. My daughter had turned our home into a surveillance operation. That night, I lay on top of my bed covers staring at the ceiling, knowing the camera in the smoke detector was watching every move I made. I made sure to look tired and slow, vacant, like an old man losing his grip on things. Inside, I was already building my next move. Monday morning, I drove 30 miles into Macon and walked into the Bibb County Public Library. I couldn't use my home computer. If Denise was surveilling me through cameras, there was every reason to believe she or Marcus had access to my devices as well. I'd spent enough years chasing fraud to know that surveillance rarely stopped at one entry point. These things had layers. At the library, I logged into my bank account for the first time in months. I'd been relying on paper statements, the way Loretta and I had always done it. But something Denise had said about those statements kept nagging at me like a loose thread. The balance was wrong. Significantly wrong. I should have had over $420,000 sitting in my savings account. I was looking at $279,000. Nearly $140,000 had moved out of my account over the past 4 months. I clicked through the transaction history, my pulse loud in my ears. Wire transfer. Cole Capital Investments. Wire transfer. Cole Capital Investments. Wire transfer. Cole Capital Investments. The same company, over and over. Amounts ranging from $12,000 to $32,000 at a time. I had never heard of Cole Capital Investments. I had certainly never authorized a single wire transfer to anybody. I searched the company online. Nothing. No website. No registration on file with the Georgia Secretary of State's office. No business license. A ghost company, the kind I used to dig out of client books during fraud investigations, buried 3 layers deep under mailing addresses that didn't exist. Then I thought about the camera in my office, pointed directly at my desk, at the drawer where my notebook sat with every account number and password Loretta had made me record, at the bank book with routing numbers written in her careful handwriting on the inside cover, because she'd wanted to make sure I was protected, because she'd spent her whole life making sure this family was protected. I closed the browser and sat there among retirees reading newspapers and college students bent over laptops. My hands were not steady. Someone had been stealing from me. Someone with access to my most private financial information. And I had let them into this house every single Sunday and fed them soup and called them family. I drove directly to the Bibb County Sheriff's Office. I asked for a detective who handled financial crimes. I was introduced to Detective Yvonne Marshall, mid-40s, direct, with the kind of focused stillness that told me she'd heard complicated stories before and wasn't easily rattled. I laid out everything. The cameras, the unauthorized wire transfers, my suspicions about Denise and Marcus. She listened without interrupting, took detailed notes, and asked sharp, precise questions. When I finished, she leaned back and was honest with me. "Mr. Bucher, I believe what you're telling me, but without documented evidence directly connecting your daughter and son-in-law to those transfers, the department's hands are tied right now." The wire transfers could be characterized as identity theft by an unknown party. The cameras, if your daughter had your permission to access the house, create a legal gray area we'd have to fight through in court. I understood. I'd worked with law enforcement on bank fraud cases for years. You didn't arrest anyone on suspicion. You arrested them on evidence. What do you suggest? I asked. She slid a business card across the desk. Patricia Chambers. She's based in Atlanta, runs her own firm, but she grew up in Macon. Former Georgia Bureau of Investigation, Financial Crimes Division, 15 years. She specializes in elder financial exploitation. She's the best there is at this. Detective Marshall paused. Mr. Booker, be careful. If your daughter is doing what you believe she's doing, she's not going to stop. In my experience, these situations don't slow down. They accelerate. That word stayed with me all the way home. Accelerate. The following morning, I called Patricia Chambers from a payphone outside a gas station on Forsyth Road. We met that afternoon at a Waffle House off the interstate, far enough from Macon that I wouldn't run into anyone I knew. Patricia was in her early 50s, sharp-eyed, with a manner that was direct without being cold, the kind of woman who had spent decades in rooms full of men who underestimated her and had long since stopped caring about their opinions. She'd seen things clearly when others couldn't or wouldn't, and she brought that same clarity to every case she worked. I told her everything from the beginning. She didn't interrupt once. When I finished, she set down her coffee cup and nodded slowly. This matches a pattern I know well, she said. Adult children who feel entitled to a parent's assets before that parent is ready to release them. It usually starts with surveillance, learning routines, accessing financial information. Then comes the exploitation. The final stage is establishing legal control. What kind of legal control? Power of attorney or guardianship, having you declared mentally incompetent. Once that's in place, they can sell your property, empty your accounts, and determine where you live. All of it completely legal, on paper. My blood went cold. Sandra, Denise, had asked about my doctor, had asked if I was sleeping well, had asked more than once if I ever got confused. How do we stop it? Patricia counted it out clearly. First, trace those wire transfers. Cole Capital Investments had the sound of a shell company, and shell companies always left paper trails if you knew where to dig. Second, identify everyone involved. Marcus was the obvious candidate, but in her experience, these schemes rarely ran on two people alone. Third, document the cameras in full, serial numbers, transmission frequencies, installation signatures. Then bring everything to law enforcement with a case solid enough to stand up without argument. She looked at me steadily. Mr. Booker, I also need to say this plainly. If your daughter is behind this, and she realizes she's been caught before we're ready, these situations can become dangerous. People who are willing to go this far don't always respond to exposure calmly. Is there somewhere safe you can go while we build the case? I thought about my land, my front porch, the fields my grandfather cleared. I'm not leaving my home, I said. Patricia nodded once, without judgment. Then we moved fast. Over the next 2 weeks, Patricia worked the financial records while I played the role of an old man slowly losing his footing. I shuffled when I walked. I repeated questions I'd already asked during phone calls with Denise. I let conversations trail off mid-sentence. She absorbed every bit of it. She wanted to see it. She needed to see it. Daddy, have you been taking your blood pressure medication? She asked one Sunday, her voice tilted with concern that didn't quite reach her eyes. Which medication? The one in the blue bottle. The one I picked up for you last month. She had never picked up any prescription for me. Not once. But she wanted me to believe I was forgetting things that had never happened. Maybe you're right, I said. I do get confused sometimes. The look on her face in that moment, satisfaction moving behind the mask of concern, was the most disturbing thing I had ever seen from my own child. Loretta would have spotted it years before I did. She always read people the way I read spreadsheets. I just hadn't been paying attention. That evening, Patricia called. Cole Capital Investments, she said. Registered in Delaware 6 months ago. Listed director of record is Marcus D. Cole. She led a beat of Silence Land. He didn't use a fake name. They rarely do, I said. They don't think they'll get caught. The wire transfers trace out of your account through Cole Capital into an offshore account in the Cayman Islands, then back into a numbered LLC registered in Georgia. The LLC recently filed a bid on agricultural property. She paused. Your agricultural property. Specifically, all 400 acres. How far along is it? Further than a bid. They've already drafted a purchase agreement. And it's not being signed by you directly. Her voice dropped just slightly. Mr. Booker, a power of attorney document was filed with the Bibb County Probate Court 3 weeks ago. Your daughter is listed as your attorney for both property and personal care. Effective immediately. The room felt like it shifted under me. I never signed anything, I said. The signature on file was traced, she said, from something you signed previously. A document, a card, something your daughter had access to and had the opportunity to copy. My mind moved immediately to the birthday card I'd signed for Darius 2 months back. Denise had been standing right beside me at the table. She'd offered to mail it for him. What's the next step? I asked. There's something else you need to know first, Patricia said. I pulled phone records for both your daughter and Marcus. Over the past 6 weeks, they've had 11 calls with an admissions coordinator at a private care facility in Dunwoody. A memory care unit. I was quiet for a moment. They're planning to have me committed, I said. Once the power of attorney is active, they petition the court that you lack capacity to manage your own affairs. A cooperative physician signs off. You go in, and everything you own transfers to their control. It has been done before. Her voice was measured, but firm. This is why we move tomorrow. I hung up the phone and sat in the dark of my living room. The camera in the light fixture watched me without blinking. My daughter was planning to take my money, sign away my land, and lock me inside a memory care unit while she and Marcus spent what 3 generations of my family had worked to build. All while I smiled and thanked her for bringing me soup on Sundays. I looked up at the camera in the ceiling. Loretta, I said quietly, watch this. The next morning, Patricia and I walked into the Bibb County Sheriff's Office together and met with Detective Yvonne, Marshall, and 2 agents from the Georgia Bureau of Investigation's Financial Crimes Unit. I brought everything, bank statements, camera photographs with serial numbers documented, the forged power of attorney, wire transfer records, phone logs, all of it organized the way 38 years of forensic accounting had trained. And to organize evidence, the agents examined each document carefully. They asked questions. They made phone calls in the hallway. By 2 in the afternoon, they had enough for arrest warrants. We'd like to move on them tomorrow morning, one of the GBI agents said. But there's a complication you need to know about. Tell me. Your daughter made a call this morning to a physician at a Dunwoody Memory Care Clinic. She scheduled a cognitive evaluation for you this Thursday. They're moving the timeline up. Patricia was already nodding. If they get a physician's signature on a diminished capacity assessment before the arrests, their defense team uses it to muddy the waters. Claims they were acting in your best interest. It turns a clean fraud case into a contested family dispute. Then you move tomorrow, I said. First thing. Detective Marshall looked at me. Mr. Booker, We'll have officers at your property by 7:30. In the meantime, go home. Keep your routine. Don't change a thing. Let her think everything is normal." I drove back to Macon as the sun dropped below the pine trees along the interstate. The fields on either side of the highway were still winter pale, but here and there I could see the first faint threads of green pushing up through the red Georgia clay. Spring was coming. Things were about to grow again. When I pulled into my driveway, Denise's car was already there. She was sitting at my kitchen table. "Daddy." She stood up immediately, her face arranged in worry. "Where have you been?" "I've been calling you all afternoon." "Went for a drive," I said. "Felt like seeing the countryside." "You can't just disappear like that without telling someone." "I was worried sick." "I'm 67, not 97, I said. "I can go for a drive when I feel like it." Her eyes tightened just briefly, something cold passing through before the warmth snapped back into place. She was good at that. She'd had practice. "Of course you can," she said, softening her voice. "I just worry. You've seemed so tired lately. A little turned around sometimes." She stepped closer and reached for my hand. "Daddy, I've been wanting to talk to you about something. There's a specialist in Atlanta I'd like you to see. A cognitive health doctor. It's nothing scary. Lots of people your age go through this evaluation. I just want to make sure you're being taken care of the right way. Thursday?" I said, "In Dunwoody?" She went very still. "How did you know about that?" I smiled at her, the same blank, pleasant smile she'd been giving me for months. "You must have mentioned it." "Right," she said slowly. "Right, I must have." She left 20 minutes later. I stood on my porch and watched her taillights disappear down the gravel road into the dark. Then I walked back through my house one final time, past the kitchen where Loretta used to bake sweet potato pie on Sunday mornings, filling the whole house with something that felt like love made into smell. Past the office where someone had photographed my passwords and tried to sell my future out from under me. Past the hallway smoke detector that had started all of this. I didn't sleep. Couldn't. I sat in the chair by the front window and watched the stars over my land, and I remembered. Loretta's laugh, low and easy, the kind that made a whole room feel safer. Darius taking his first steps on this porch while Loretta clapped, and I stood there stupidly proud. The evening we finished building this house. Standing in the empty living room with sawdust on our clothes and a future in front of us that felt wide open and full of promise. At 7:25, I saw the headlights moving up the road. 3 vehicles moving with purpose through the early morning gray. I walked outside to meet them. Mr. Booker. Detective Marshall stepped out first. "We're executing the warrants now. Officers are at your daughter's home in Macon simultaneously. Can I be there?" I asked. She hesitated, then shook her head gently. "It'll be better this way." I nodded, but I followed anyway. I needed to see it with my own eyes. Needed it to be real. Denise and Marcus lived in a brick bungalow in a newer subdivision on the north side of Macon. 2 vehicles in the driveway, Marcus's truck and Denise's SUV. The officers moved up the front walk. Detective Marshall knocked twice, firm and official. The door opened. Marcus's face went through confusion. Then a pale, sudden comprehension. Then nothing. Just the blank look of a man who had already decided to say nothing without a lawyer present. Then I heard Denise. She didn't use words at first. Just sound, raw, furious. The kind of sound that comes up from somewhere below language. 2 officers brought her out through the front door in handcuffs. Her hair loose. Her face unrecognizable to me in that moment. Twisted into something I had no name for. She looked up and saw me standing at the edge of the road. Everything in her went quiet. "Daddy." Her voice dropped to a child's register. Small and uncertain. The way it used to sound when she was 7 years old and had broken something she knew she shouldn't have touched. I couldn't speak. I didn't trust myself to. Daddy, you don't understand. I was trying to help you. You're not well. You need someone to take care of you. Still nothing from me, Dot. Then the mask came down all the way. You stupid old man. Her voice went hard and flat. Do you understand what you've done? That farm should have been mine years ago. You should have been in a facility years ago. But you just keep holding on, tying everything up in property taxes and equipment repairs, while Marcus and I can barely keep our heads above water. She pulled in a breath. I talked to you. You never listened. The only one in this family who ever truly listened was Mama. And when she died, you should have just... She stopped herself. But I heard the rest of it in the silence. When Loretta died, I should have given up. Handed it all over. Faded out. I found my voice. I loved you, Denise. Everything I built, this land, this house, everything, was built for you and Darius. All you ever had to do was be patient. Talk to me. Ask. She laughed. A sound that had nothing of my daughter left in it. They put her in the back of the first vehicle. Marcus went in the second. Neither of them looked in my direction as they pulled away. I stood in the street until the sound of the engines was gone completely. A neighbor came out and asked if everything was all right. I told him yes. What else is there to say in a moment like that? The investigation ran for 5 months. Patricia Chambers traced every single dollar. The GBI and the Bibb County DA's office built a case airtight enough that there was no negotiation to be had. Denise and Marcus had stolen $142,000. They had forged my signature on a power of attorney document. They had created a shell company specifically to purchase my land at below market value through a fraudulent transaction. They had installed cameras throughout my home to document what they planned to present as evidence of my mental decline. The physician in Dunwoody confirmed that someone had been providing him fabricated reports about my condition, reports filed by a woman identifying herself as a concerned daughter at trial. Denise's attorney argued that she had acted out of genuine concern for her father's well-being, that she had believed I was showing early signs of dementia, that the wire transfers were a family financial matter handled carelessly, but not criminally. The judge heard it. The jury heard it. Neither of them accepted it. Denise received 4 years in a federal institution. Marcus received 3. Both lost their professional licenses. Their home was seized toward restitution. On sentencing day, Denise asked through her attorney if she could speak to me briefly. The choice was mine. I said no. People asked me afterward whether I felt guilty, whether the first regretted it, whether the first wished I had found some other way. The truth is this: I miss the daughter I believed I had. The little girl who used to sit on the porch, step shelling butter beans with Loretta. The teenager who held my hand in the hospital parking lot the day they told us about her mother's diagnosis and didn't let go for a long time. The young woman who had her mother's eyes and I had believed. Her mother's character. But that person and the person who drilled holes into my smoke detector forged my name and scheduled me for a memory care unit while I ate her cooking and told her I loved her. Those are not the same person. Maybe they never were. Maybe I just didn't want to see it clearly enough. Loretta would have seen it. Women like Loretta always do. Darius drove down from Athens last month. He's finishing his degree at the University of Georgia, doing well. He wanted to apologize for his mother. Told me he had no idea what she was doing. I told him he had nothing to apologize for. The failures of parents don't transfer to their children. We walked the south field together in the late afternoon light. The wheat was coming up green and even and strong. It was going to be a good season. Grandpa, he said, looking out across the land, What's going to happen to all of this? I told him the truth. I'd changed my will. The farm would go to him when I was gone, held in trust until he turned 30. I'd set up education accounts for any children he might have someday. This land had survived 3 generations of people who refused to let it go. It would survive 3 more. He cried. He thanked me. That's not why I did it, I said. I did it because it's right. Because family is supposed to mean something. And because I trust you. He looked at me with his grandmother's eyes, steady and warm and completely clear. I won't let you down. Grandpa, I believe him, looking back now. I understand how close I came to losing not just the money or the farm, but my freedom, my dignity, my name. If I hadn't noticed that camera, if I hadn't trusted the feeling that something was wrong, if I had simply accepted what Denise wanted me to accept, that I was a confused old man who needed to be managed, I would be sitting in a memory care unit in Dunwoody right now, medicated and compliant, watching strangers sell the land my grandfather cleared with his own hands, while his great-granddaughter spent the proceeds. It happens more than you think. Patricia Chambers told me she handles dozens of cases like mine every year. Most of them never get reported. The victims are too ashamed, too disoriented, or too isolated to come forward. They spend their final years in care facilities, bewildered, wondering what happened to the families they spent their whole lives building. If something in your own situation feels wrong right now, trust that feeling. The people in your life who truly love you will never make you doubt your own mind. Document what you see. Tell someone outside the situation that you trust. Contact the authorities. And understand clearly, the people who can hurt us most are almost always the ones we never suspected. The lesson I carry forward is this. Love is not permission to exploit. Blood is not a license to steal. And age does not make us helpless, unless we allow others to convince us that it does. I am 68 years old. I still live on this farm. I still change the smoke detector batteries every 6 months, the way Loretta taught me, because her routines saved my life in the end. The cameras are gone. The shell company is dissolved. My accounts are secure. And every morning I walk out through these fields and thank God for another day on land that 3 generations of my family refused to surrender. Some wounds don't close all the way. Some things you lose, you don't get back. But I'm still here, still standing, still walking my own land under my own power. That has to count for something. Where are you watching from right now? What time is it there? And have you ever trusted someone completely, only to find out you never really knew them at all? Tell me in the comments. I read every one. If this story reached something in you, please subscribe to this channel and hit that notification bell. Every week, we bring you true stories about love, loss, betrayal, and the kind of strength it takes to get back on your feet when the people you trusted the most are the ones who tried to bring you down. Thank you for listening. Stay sharp, trust yourself, and never let anyone tell you that you're less than you know you are.